Aloha, anyone, everyone, whoever's listening. I am Jeremy Vaeni. I am flying solo doing this Wise Ask. Tom is unavailable at the moment. So I did get listener questions, so maybe I will riff on that. Really, I said online in a few places, I was like, hey, should I go live Friday? Let me know what you think. And like only my wife, I think, maybe one other person on Facebook liked the post, and then nobody even commented on Blue Sky. So it's like, maybe I shouldn't do this. But my wife apparently enjoys watching this. She doesn't get enough of this guy in person. She likes to see him on the big screen. So, Carol, this is for you. And maybe no one else. Hey, but if you are out there and you're in the chat, I am once again using StreamYard. So I don't have my YouTube feed open. But I have the YouTube feed here in StreamYard. So in other words, I can't really see if people are online watching, but if you are, let me know if I am blurry and if I sound okay. I thought my audio was a bit hot the last time I did this with Tom, and I don't want my audio to be hot. So please let me know. In the YouTube, the YouTube typey chat thing. And also, if you have any questions or comments, I'll take them. And hey, if you ever want to be on here with me, or me and Tom, let me know that too. I can just pop in a link and you can come on and we can chit chat. So before I get to listener questions, which has to do with psychedelics and Kundalini and all that fun stuff, had a weird week. So it started, when did it start? Monday? I guess that's when the week starts, right? So Monday night or evening, between 7 and 7:30, because I was making food for our cats, which I do at 7:30. I'm like, the kitchen sink is here, and I'm making food on the counter here, and I just see kind of like just a flurry in my peripheral vision of like movement. It looks kind of brown in movement, and I of course look over, and there's nothing there. I'm thinking like a rat or a mouse or something, which would suck because we have 3 cats, and it probably wouldn't stand a chance. But there's nothing there, and so I'm thinking, okay, is light playing a trick off my glasses, or there are lizards in the window, there are geckos at night, outside, and could I just be seeing like a gecko tail? And it's, usually these things don't play tricks with me, but stuff happens. So I just sort of passed that off that way. But then at some other point, not much later, like within the hour, as I'm walking into the kitchen, I see again a flurry of activity in a doorway into, what is Carol's office, basically. My playroom, Carol's office, another bedroom. I don't know, it's an all-purpose room. And but it looks to me to be, again, brown, but it looks like you would swear it is the outline of a shoulder in the air, but it's really moving fast, and when I go to look at it, it's not there. But that's what it reminded me of. It's like, okay, do I have a ghost? And then our cat Gracie, who's like, we have 3 cats, and the 2 boys, they eat all their food and they're done. Gracie grazes all night, and every time, and she's only got one eye. She's probably, she's not blind in it, but it's probably not great vision, but still, she doesn't generally stare at things, or if she does, she stares at her reflection in the refrigerator. But she never really pays attention to the dishwasher, and she kept just going and being around the dishwasher and looking at it, not really sniffing under it, but still I thought, okay, is there like a giant bug or a rodent or something? Again, I'm back in this sort of, but it was just weird. She kept doing it all night. But the other 2 cats, who are real hunters, didn't pay any attention to it. So, I didn't say anything to Carol about it because outside of the outline of a shoulder in the air, I'm thinking like, okay, we've either got rodents or ghosts. Like this, I don't know. But then cut to midnight, and Carol wakes up because the light above her head, we have these two like reading lamps above our heads attached to the wall, and they have flip switches. It had turned itself on somehow, magically. And so she woke up, and she woke me up, and she's like, Gracie didn't do it, I didn't do it, this thing just turned on. And then I told her about what I'd seen in the kitchen, because then it clicked with me like, okay, is this a harbinger of something? Because the last time there was weirdness with me, and I don't remember all of what happened with me, it might have just been this feeling of something Jeff Ritzmann and I used to talk about on Paratopia, the feeling of proximity to the visitors, the so-called aliens, that feeling, your hackles get raised, there's kind of a dread feeling, it's this proximity feeling that you get. I had that out in the yard, which is I think the second time I've had here in Hawaii, and I've lived here since 2012. And the first time, I believe, was a cougar in the yard stalking me, which I did a whole thing about, even though there's not supposed to be cougars in Hawaii. There was one seen roaming around the island that nobody could seem to catch, but okay. And then it just disappeared. But I won't go into all of why I think it was a cougar, except that we heard it, the cougar sound. I talked about this in a Paratopia special. It was an October Halloween special from a couple years back. I don't remember, maybe 2023 or so. So anyway, that's an actual like predator stalking you feeling. And that's what it feels like in proximity to the visitors. So I do remember having that feeling, and I don't remember what else happened to me if anything. But I do remember the living room light going on by itself. And if Carol may have been the first to have noticed that happen too. I just sleep through everything, I guess. But it was like a sort of middle of the night thing or whatever. And then those events happened, I think, the day before Jeff Ritzmann passed away. So I don't believe they happened as he was passing away, like Jeff came to visit or something like that. But I think it was like a harbinger of, what's to come fairly immediately. So I kind of just chalked this up to that. And Carol's mom, who is literally 100 years old, she's not like 100 years old, she is 100 years old, slipped and fell and really hurt her tailbone. And so Carol was worried, she doesn't want to go to the hospital. So could it be that her mom is going to pass away? And then I'm thinking about like my family members who could maybe be passing away. Basically, we thought someone was going to die. Like we're just like waiting for the death announcement, which didn't come. But Tuesday we did have a tsunami warning, which is unusual. So then we were like, okay, is this it? Is there a giant tsunami coming? And the tsunami never really came, which is great. Although you wouldn't know it was great by the sound of disappointment in the weathercaster's voice as they're like, okay, the science tells us it's going to be here at 10 past 7. It's 10 past 7 and nothing. No death and destruction. No weeks of coverage that are cheap to do for the network and make us feel, something about the heroes and something about the victims and something about the raw power of nature. Sorry, not this time. So I don't know. And now her mom is feeling better. Carol figured out the right creams to give her to make her actually feel better. And so seems as though it's not a break or a fracture, so she's actually feeling a lot better now. And as far as I know, everyone but Hulk Hogan is dead. So, alive. Or maybe we're all dead and Hulk Hogan's alive. That would be something. So I don't know. What is the time frame window of a harbinger experience? I don't know. Although there was another weird I don't know if this is related or not. Maybe it's related to Gracie's, the cat's sniffing around. Right up against, buttressed against, or whatever, the dishwasher is, and it's behind the garbage can, is a cabinet door, and in that cabinet door there is we have an old refrigerator tray from an old refrigerator that is just in there, just full of crap. And I was looking for something, and I went and saw that it was actually filled with this black water. So this was a problem. And so I went and cleaned all of that out and all that. But there appears to be no leak under the sink. So I don't know what that is. Now, we've tried the garbage disposal. It's not that. The only thing left is we have not run the dishwasher yet. So maybe when we run the dishwasher, we'll see that there's a big leak there. But so far, there's no condensation. There's no leak. What the hell what's going on? So is that part of this? Is that what Gracie was reacting to? I don't know. But just phantom weirdness. And maybe that wasn't a harbinger. Maybe I was just putting things together and it wasn't. But it just has been a weird week. So there's that. So now that I've babbled on about that, if anyone has made their way to watching this video on YouTube, can you tell me in the chat? I don't think I look blurry, but I don't know how I sound. Do I sound okay? Or is my audio too hot or too low? Please let me know. And I guess I will move on to the next thing. And maybe I'll even, who knows, maybe I'll even end up tying all this together in a weird way. Let's find out. So I got some listener feedback here. And and before I say this, let me just say Tom Cheatham, who I usually do this Wise Ask with, he is, I don't know that this is the first time, but he's sort of impressing upon me to do a re-release of Urgency, my book Urgency, with an updated version with bonus material or something that he would write a review for, and maybe I could get Jeff Kripal to write a review for, and all of that is really nice and really kind. Unfortunately, I don't know, I need a real publisher for that to be worth doing. Because my audience has already read Urgency, so do they need an updated version of Urgency? But I mean, I would entertain it if enough people were like, yeah, I would love that. Because right now I'm trying to put the finishing touches on a book about Kundalini. Stylistically, it's not the same as Urgency, so it wouldn't work as bonus material. But a lot of the topics are touched on. A lot of the same topics are there. So, is it a spiritual successor to the spiritual book? Perhaps. So if you read that, is it worth then going, you know what I mean? I would need to bring it to a broader audience is my feeling, but what's your feeling? Are any of you out there clamoring for an updated Urgency book? Let me know. Not that, I don't even think anyone's watching this, honestly. This is just for me and my wife. Although people do watch later. They don't, as she reminded me, they don't always watch the live, but whatever. Really, the live is masturbatory. It's for me. And now I know it's for the Apostle Q. Okay. So I got this email from a listener named Ron, who is a good guy, seems to me. He always asks decent questions. I met him, or virtually met him, in one of Tom Cheatham's classes when he invited me to speak. This is when Tom and I first met. So Ron was in that group of people. And he's like the only one who has like kept up with me. I think, and like continues to email me every now and then. So that's cool. So he's asking, I've always wondered if the concept of dying before you die is related to some of your experiences. Dying before you die is a Sufi thing, I think. Anyway, it's in the Korban stuff. By Korban, he means Henry Korban, who is Tom Chetham's guy. That's his big subject matter. For those of you who are new, my wife, and then the one other person who might just be watching by accident. And when he's talking about dying before dying, of course, he's talking about dying egoically while the body remains alive, which is where I come in. So he asks that if the concept of dying before you die is related to some of your experiences. Dying before you die is a Sufi thing, I think. Anyway, it's in the Korban stuff. And then he goes on and says, and with respect, here's a more complicated question. I've had experiences during meditation of jerky body movements, glossolalia, which I looked up and is speaking in tongues, basically. So he's had jerky movements, speaking in tongues, yelling while meditating, and an inner experience of letting go, and they're not self-generated. Do you believe that is stress at a deep level coming out, which is what I've always been told? I'm not saying it's Kundalini, but it certainly isn't manufactured by me, at least not consciously. Yeah, probably not Kundalini, but something's going on. I read the Gopi Krishna book, and man, he went through some hell. Don't know if there's a question here, but anyway, ... And then we go on because I asked him to clarify his first thing, which he did, but let's maybe just deal with this first. So we'll deal with the second thing first. The second thing is the more complicated question. So he's saying in his meditation, right, he's had body movements and talking in tongues and all this. And what I appreciate is he's asking me what I think it is and not telling me it's Kundalini. And in fact, he's saying, yeah, I don't think it's Kundalini, but what do you think? Because other people just tell me what they're going through is Kundalini. Despite me, as I did in the last, I think, at this point, He's So Vaeni, where I demonstrated shutting up for a second and these movements, Kundalini energy taking over and doing these movements, which is a far cry different from what they're experiencing and whatever you see on YouTube. And again, I put it to you very simply. If we're talking about an intelligence, an energy, a goddess, it's not a goddess, but okay, if you believe that, why would this just be acting as some sort of mechanical energy that once triggered by you just kind of makes you do jerky things or do talking in nonsense gibberish or yelling? Like, what's the intelligence behind that? And what you're told is the intelligence is it's like clearing out chakras and it's doing this stuff, and when you do that, these weird things unique to you happen, and there's some truth to that, but it's also like there's truth to the clearing out chakras part or whatever, the waking up of these energy centers in the body. But what isn't true is like it's an intelligent energy. Just think of what you do as an intelligent person, an intelligent energy. Do you do things that are just nonsense? Right? They're just like, blah. That's what a crazy person does, right? So why would a goddess waste her time making you go and just, start yelling in tongues or whatever? So what's interesting is I hadn't heard this idea that it could be related to stress, because I really don't read a whole lot about this stuff. I do watch YouTube videos, but I don't. So I looked it up, and sure enough, you can find a lot of things, a lot of places where it is said that these movements during meditation and yelling and the such, twitching and body postures are due to the release of stress. And it makes sense to me that that would be the case, because there are a couple of things going on. Like what I've been trying to say is like there are other energies, prana. I know people want to make these all one energy because at the end of the day, we are all one energy. But we're all one energy manifesting as differences. And so we must respect those differences because they are apparent. They are all around us. I am not the camera that I am speaking into, even though we are all one energy, but we're manifesting differently, you see? So both are the case at the same time, oneness and two-ness, duality and non-duality. So since we're dealing in duality, and since that's where we are living and trying to figure out the mechanics of and whatever, it would behoove us to get it right, right? So there are other energies in the body, and the body has its own natural language. So these movements, there may be movements and postures and things like that happen naturally from prana, from just life force energy or something like that. There may be these movements that get triggered from the release of stress, a deep relaxation, which involves psychological relaxation as well in meditation, and also Kundalini may use these movements, and whatever else. I mean, you may use these movements because somebody figured them out and jotted them down, or had them happen to them naturally and then jotted them down and said, look, yoga, look, Tai Chi, whatever it is. Look, ritual magic. And these movements may also come from Earth. So what we're talking about in terms of movements is a body language. And so the question just is, who's speaking it? Which energy is speaking it? And all I'm saying is a lot of this stuff isn't being spoken by Kundalini, and we think it is because we're told it is, because sometimes it is. But Kundalini speaks it fluently. Kundalini doesn't, say, "Donde está el baño?" as I would if I were asking where's the bathroom in Spanish. It wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like, and that's what a lot of these jerky body movements and speaking in tongues and whatever are. The whole speaking in tongues and yelling, that's not a Kundalini thing at all. And as far as Gopi Krishna goes, I've not read his book. I remember leafing through it a few times. Really, I never bought it and like speed read it or kind of read it. I just literally in the bookstores like, I did hear him speak or see, watch like a YouTube video of him in an interview or something. And I've read up about him a little bit. But I know this is going to be sacrilegious to a lot of people, and maybe even literally sacrilegious. I don't believe he's describing Kundalini either. I think he's describing something else, and I think it's being sold as Kundalini. And the reason I think that is because Kundalini is the intelligence of silence. Silence with a capital S, not sitting silently and being quiet, but the deep silence of nothing being in the way, no thought constructs, which is you. When I talk about ego death, I just want to be clear, I'm not talking about there's you and you have an ego and you've got to get rid of it. I'm talking about the self must be no more. That includes all the crap that you think is different from the self, but also secretly you. Like the higher self, the Atman, by whatever word, right? My soul. No, all of these notions that we have about what we are just garbage. And it doesn't even matter if they're true. They're not really true for you. They're just something you believe. And that belief carries with it its own collective construct that can actually be experienced sometimes. And it's a facsimile of the real. So maybe I'll unpack that a bit in a minute. But just know that all of you must be no more, because you are noise. Whether you're a high noise or a low-pitched noise, you're noise. And for silence to be the case, one must be silence, not be silenced, not try to shut up, not do anything about it. Silence is silence. This is where we get to like, oh, we really all are one thing, even though we're appearing as differences. That silence is one silence, and that is truly you beyond all the appearances of having been silenced through meditation, through prayer, through humble right action, or whatever. It's just when the self-construct is no more, silence is the case, and that silence is intelligence. That intelligence is therefore its own order. And so the will of that silence is what we call Kundalini, or should be. What we call Kundalini is really a disorder. Some form of disorder that, because it's different than your conscious intent, we think like, oh, that's got to be this other thing that I've been marketed as. Is that a sentence? It is now. So yeah, I mean, I think it could be jerky body movements and all that. I mean, you know, it to me, it's like, I remember when I was a kid going to the doctor and they test your reflexes, right? They knock you on the knee with a little hammer and your leg jerks. And that's not you doing it either. But for some reason, that's not mystical to us. But if like a Swami from the East in the 1950s or something came over here and was like, oh, that's Kundalini, you'd be like, oh my God, that's Kundalini. And meanwhile, it's just a reflexive response to the hammer on the knee, which in itself is fascinating that we have that, right? Like, there's a lot of things that get overlooked for how fascinating they are, because they seem so ordinary to us to think about, especially in terms of like the collective consciousness. And whether you believe in some sort of, I should say, allow for some sort of, you know, computer cloud version of that. And I don't mean that literally, I mean that metaphorically, where like it's just sort of in the ether. Because a lot of scientists don't go for that, for the Jungian thing of like, it's just there. But as soon as you say genetically speaking, oh, now we've got a materialist anchor and we can say that we store memories in our genetics and we are the product of our ancestors genetically, and therefore we carry the collective with us physically. Oh, well, that's real then. But either way you want to shake that out, isn't it fascinating that the actions of previous people are somehow stored within us, and act on us in different ways and through us, and we act on them and through them as well. But that's not special enough. We have to then be like, I want the special thing. Well, that's nice, but the special thing has nothing to do with you at all, because it is silence. And you're wanting that is noise. You, the person wanting that, are the ultimate noise. So, yeah. Seeing the dilemma, for real, seeing it and getting that you are the noise, if you get it, that stops the noise. That stops you in your tracks. If you don't get it, then you're still going on. And you're like, oh, this must not be true because I'm still here. Oh, I got to be able to do something about it. Well, no, you just really don't want to hear it. Even those of you who say you do. And the proof is in the pudding, because if you're not completely transformed by that miraculous revelation, then you didn't want to hear it. But it has to come from you. Like, I'm just a guy babbling at you kind of quickly. You've got to sit with this and ponder this on your own. This isn't a group exercise. I can only point things out, and then it's up to you to like do the work of no work. So now is the point where I pause and ask again, is anyone in the chat? Say something, please, because I just need to know if my microphone sucks. You could just write Y or N and then enter. Look how easy that would be. Surely there's got to be one person in there. I know my wife is on a phone call, so I don't even know who this is for, honestly. Okay. Oh, here's something I wanted to bring up. This is kind of funny, because as I was looking for, to answer this question for him, for Ron, one of the places I found was this enhanced app, which is a meditation app. And they have a little article, 7 involuntary movements during meditation and their meaning. And they tend to say what Ron was asking. They tend to say, like, yeah, it's release of tension and that causes these things. But also it could be Kundalini, right? Like some of these things could be Kundalini. And they have the 7 most common involuntary movements: shaking during meditation, twitching during meditation, eyes twitching during meditation, swaying. Itching? Did I say itching? Shaking, twitching, eyes twitching, swaying, itching, yawning, spontaneous body postures. And then they have, why do the movements occur during meditation? What is the meaning behind them? I just wanted to, I guess I should have pulled it up because I don't remember where it is, but when they talk about Kundalini, okay, maybe it's this. Kriyas and their significance. So the involuntary movements during meditation are called kriyas in the Sanskrit, I believe. So it says, kriyas are sudden movements that happen during meditation. They show a strong spiritual awakening is going on inside your body. These might feel like muscle spasms or jerks while meditating. Well, already that's problematic because you just admitted that most likely it's the release of stress and tension. Like if I go back up here and read some of these things, it's like that's the most... So that's not a strong sign of spiritual awakening. That's a strong sign that you're about to fart, right? That's problematic to me. Then it goes on. This happens because energy is making new paths in your body. Okay? This energy, called Kundalini, wakes up during meditation and causes kriyas. Don't worry if this makes you move in strange ways. It's normal and even good for you. Over time, as your body opens more pathways for the energy, these sudden movements will get less frequent and powerful. So this is an app, I guess, for your phone to help you meditate, and they're getting it wrong. And so, of course, why wouldn't people believe that Kundalini is this? This is all you're ever told, you know? But as I've demonstrated, these movements don't get less frequent and powerful. It's whatever the body needs, whatever one needs in the moment when silence is acting is what will happen. And so that's it. But no, we want this Kundalini to be, you know, even though they're saying it's probably not Kundalini, once you get down here, it kind of definitely is. It's just bizarre to me that they went from one to the other. So like eye twitching during meditation. Now let me just take this because I just clicked on it. Eye twitching during meditation is a common phenomenon experienced by many practitioners. This involuntary movement occurs when the muscles around the eyes spasm or contract uncontrollably. It can be caused by overstimulation, which leads to these muscle contractions. Some individuals may also experience rapid eye movement during meditation. While eye twitching might feel distracting or uncomfortable, it is important to remember that it is a normal part of the meditation process for some people. Okay. Swaying during meditation. Swaying during meditation is a common involuntary movement that can happen. This swaying motion is often linked to the Kundalini energy rising in the spine. It may also be an initial indicator of negative energy beings or demons present during meditation. Uh-oh. I guess I didn't read this one. The spiritual meaning behind swaying varies for each individual, and it's important to focus deeply on the experience to understand its significance. Other common involuntary movements during meditation include shaking, head movements, and twitches. So, I didn't read that before. That's gross. I mean, okay, enhanced app. Enhanced, meditate more, stress less, live better. How do you stress less and live better if you're infested with demons? Right? That seems problematic to me, but have at it. I'm sure there's a free version. All right. And what's funny is, even as I say this, I know I've talked about a demonic-y thing that happened, but it's very specific. And it's actually not the Kundalini. It's related to the thing that the Kundalini is leading to, or at least one of the things. Because again, we're talking about intelligence doing intelligent design work. So it's not just, this opening up of chakras. What do you think that's for? I mean, ultimately, there's an energy system in the body that we, especially we Westerners, have dormant in us. And so it activates that to what? So that you, the person, the ego with the desire, that person can have psychic powers or heal people or whatever. Like, you really think that's what it's about? For you to go on with life feeling special and like you've got something over other people? No. The one thing it's leading to, which again I've not heard anyone talk about, is the slit in the spine. The etheric slit that opens up a few inches. It feels like surgical precision, and blissful energy pours in, and then various other things can happen. And then the energy pours out, and the slit closes. This is different than Kundalini. And this is not anything that at least I've been able to control. It's happened to me 3 times, and someone else is deciding this. It's not like I shut up and the energy takes over. It's like it just has happened 3 times. And the second time was this, what you would call, just based on the prejudice of looking at it, a demon, because I could see it superimposed over me. I had recurring dreams. I guess one of the things that's confusing is, at least for me, I did go through a period of like clairvoyance and clairaudio and these recurring dreams where I'm being shown around a dojo in hell by Asian people. And in one of these rooms was like humans on yoga mats, and on the wall was this giant mural of like a muddy red demon-y gargoyle thing, which I believe came in through the slit the second time it opened and was basking in the glow of being alive through the body for the few seconds that it had. And I could see it superimposed, its teeth, gnashing my teeth. Arr. But nothing evil occurred. There was no real, like, even fear. My fear at the time, I had a fear, and my fear was like, oh, because of the way this looks, and because I had that experience in the dream dojo or whatever, is this a demon? Will this run me out? Will I run out of my bedroom and kill my roommates and run madly into the streets, and then they'll say it was temporary madness, but I'll know that I was possessed and it wasn't me doing it, but now I've got to take responsibility. Like, these kinds of imaginary scenarios ran through my head as possibilities, because that's all my culture tells me about this shit, right? It's like, it's demons, or it's something you can take a class for, or get an app for. But it just doesn't cover it to say demons. And now I'm going to be a capitalist and say, I'll go more into it in my book. So really, I don't mind talking about it, even though it's going to be in the book. I don't like spoilers. But other people do like spoilers. So maybe, I don't know, spoiler alert. I think it's possible, at least, that because the next event that happens when the slit opens is the experience of nothingness, and from nothingness, consciousness, and from consciousness, the universe exploding into existence, and I am all of that experience. And, that's the big epiphany, I think. Or at least that's one big epiphany. And then after that experience happens, feels like the inherent choice of that's a person that you can actually be. That person who experiences all points of view at one time, like a God-man kind of thing. You can go be that guy, or you can be Jeremy. What do you want to do here? Now, I've talked about this before. In retrospect, how can I know whether that's a real choice? It's quite possible that when you go from non-duality back into duality, or from clarity back into confusion, or from the unlimited back into the limited, there is naturally the appearance of a choice that is a false choice. It's quite possible. And how would I know unless I picked the other one? But I picked being me, I thought, because I did want to write about it and bring my message to the people, because the one thing is that you're not special, and not in the way that people who are selling you I'm not special as they're selling you special things. No, legit, the one thing is that this is all of us. This isn't just me. So therefore I can't go off and be the God man, and I got to do my best to bring my message to the people so that everyone can at least have a shot, And I'm not so vain as to think I'm going to change the world, or I'm even the first to have done this, But that's just, I think that was my natural reaction anyway in that moment. But I also, in going back and I don't know how many people, but I assume this has got to be an archetypal trope, because it happened to Jesus, it happened to Buddha, of the temptation of the devil or whatever, Jesus, right? I don't remember what the story is, but he's on the cross and there's a snake. And Buddha, he's meditating under the tree and having his enlightenment, but then there's demonic forces that are trying to attack him. And I wonder if because, I didn't know about that, or I didn't pay attention to it. I mean, I'm sure I heard the Jesus thing before any of this. I did not hear the Buddha thing. In fact, I thought Buddhists didn't believe in any of that stuff, but okay, whatever. So, because I don't pay attention to that stuff, was my ignorance bliss? So that when I had my moment with the demon, with the archetypal demon, I didn't even know to fight it. I didn't know to be a spirit warrior. I didn't know to be afraid. I didn't know any of that. What I felt was a being who seemed ancient, who seemed very strong, or whatever, had a sort of a power to him. It was a him. And I sort of felt something of its background. I sort of felt its interiority, and I saw it superimposed over my exteriority. And it was literally basking in the glow of being alive for the few seconds that it had. So it seemed more a sympathetic character, and it seemed more no, we've got a prejudice based on this Christian notion of demons and evil. Because even being in that dojo in hell, and then again reading about Buddhist levels of hell, and I think, at least in some ways of thinking, the earth plane is a level of hell. We're certainly making it a level of hell at this point, but I mean, it's really beautiful and not hell, right? This dojo there was nothing hellish about it. So even our notion of what hell is, I don't know. I don't know that we've got a handle on any of this stuff. But again, that demon-y experience happened for a reason, and there's a certain clarity about what that being was in terms of how it was, its own interiority, its own feelings inside. I got a sense of that, a real clear sense of that. It's not just rando demons floating around you as you're making you sway. Like, that's not a thing. But Kundalini energy may make you sway. In fact, the slit opening up you don't move at all. In fact, I didn't want to move because I was afraid that, like, I would screw something up. But you may sway, but it's leading to something. The Kundalini movements are for something. They are orderly. They're not random bits of nonsense and noise. So why might you get random bits of nonsense and noise if not from stress or whatever? Because they do also talk about, and I've closed it out already, but that website, they talk about like the body postures and stuff. What would be a good reason to experience your body doing yogic postures and things like this? Or yelling, primal scream therapy, I don't know, just happening to you spontaneously. I do think a lot of it is unconscious stuff. I think a lot of people, it's like the evangelists who have laughing fits or who speak in tongues or throw their hands up, and they do all the same sort of stuff that you might see in a group of people who are allegedly Kundalini activated. If that Kundalini activation isn't someone doing puppet hands over you while you have an orgasm, then it's usually these sorts of movements, and articulations and vocalizations. And so I think in those cases, a lot of what it is, and you've got to be honest with yourself as to whether this is you, and I'm not talking to just Ron, I'm talking to everyone. Is it that you're being given permission in a public setting or privately, but usually it's public setting, to do these things? Are you being given permission to act out in an otherwise taboo way, and that feels like such a release that release feels spiritual, when what it is chemical and psychological? I think that's one great possibility. But another is, again, I think there can be prana or whatever else. I mean, I'm no expert on what other energies are, but from what I understand, there are other energies in the body, and since it is a natural language, they can be speaking it too, as can Earth. I mean, Earth gives indigenous cultures not raised on books, but raised on Earth, rituals, dances, chants, songs, wisdom, ways of being, culture, right? So these all come up through, an energy that is both you and not you. But that's not Kundalini, that's Earth. So that's also a possibility. But what do I want to say about this? So the other possibility is that because if you're a seeker, you think you want to be, you think you're seeking, let's say you think you're seeking truth. I'll put it as a proposition. Let's say you think you're seeking because who wants the false, right? So we think we're seeking truth, whatever that is. But as I said, truth, which is basically the same as saying silence, truth is of silence. So that is inherent order. That is the order that we block out with the person who is seeking said order. So really, because that's happening, the truth that you are going to find, because if you really wanted that truth, you wouldn't want that truth anymore. You would be it. That's the truth of truth. And so really what you're seeking is what you really want, which is a truth that you can have, not a truth that you are no longer exist and it becomes the case. So because that is the really real story that you're ignoring about yourself, the truth that you may find is something that the universe has concocted from those who have experienced or been silence, truth, whatever word. People like me who then bring a message back to my people. Well, that message gets broken up and incorporated into the universe. It becomes other things. I mean, if you don't hear it clearly, then you're going to hear it not clearly. And the not clearly is the universe doing that. So the universe may, in fact, set you up for failure, which is kind of what you want. The universe is just giving you what you want, which is like, oh, you want to, it's the Buddhist saying, right? Like, if you see Buddha on the road, kill him, meaning that that's your final illusion. So if you think that you're going to meet Buddha, and then some sort of hallucinogenic Buddha appears, or the voice, or the feeling, or whatever, it's getting you sucked into that rabbit hole of your own expectation of what you want. It's giving you what you want, and that has a lot of deep feelings with it, and it is, in some ways, because in duality world we've broken the oneness into hierarchies of spiritual stuff. You can think that you're on a higher plane. You can feel as though you are. But I think the tell is that eventually, after the pleasure and stuff wears off, you might just become a bit of a narcissist and not know it. But everyone around you knows it, and then they're like, I gotta go. Or you start a cult, and then everyone's like, I gotta join that. But like, there is this thing of the universe giving you a false construct, and not in any malicious way. It's you doing it. Like, you want the false construct, because again, if you didn't, the proof is in the pudding. You'd have died by now while the body remained alive. It would have happened. I've told you all this stuff, right? Like, if you've listened to me at all, ever, you've heard this. And so, in some form or another, and it hasn't worked on you because you don't want it to. It really is that simple. The unfortunate thing of saying that out loud is that if I were a liar selling you something, such as a cult leader, I would also say that. I would say that exact same thing. Like, yeah, of course it's not working. You don't want it to. So buy my other thing or get out. But no, I'm sorry that evil people steal the same language, but that's how this works. That's part of how this works. Truth gets co-opted and made into something that it is not, because once timelessness enters the time stream, it dies. Truth is timeless. Truth is beyond psychological time, beyond the universe, transcends and includes, blah, blah. But just because it includes doesn't mean that you can't block it out. It includes you whether you know it or not, but most people not. And if they do, it is to the extent that, like, there are moments of insight, moments of wisdom, but it's not you. It's not who you are. It's still held at bay as a thing happening to you or a thing you experience and then talk about, but it's not you. Okay. So that's what I think a lot of it is too. Not just the so-called Kundalini, not just but the peak experiences, the states and stages of consciousness, all of this shit, I think is breaking truth into the lie because we are the liars. That's the state we live in. Hey, we are fallen. I guess this is hell. But I don't mean it in a bad way like that. I mean, like, that's just, it's the thing that we have to see through. It's the shell that we have to peck out of to become the bird or the butterfly or the whatever. It just is. And then I say that and people are going to be like, yeah, you grow spiritually. No, I'm talking about instantaneously. I'm talking about pecking the hell out. I'm not talking about a lifetime full of learning and exploring and isn't this great? And, oh, I can navel gaze and sniff my own feet. I can put my foot in my mouth now because I'm so limber from all the yoga. Great. Wonderful. All right. I hope that made some semblance of sense. And now, the first question was, Ron said, I've always wondered if the concept of dying before you die is related to some of your experiences. Dying before you die is a Sufi thing, I think. Anyway, it's in the Korban stuff. Well, dying before you die is not just a Sufi thing, it's an everything thing. It's in every, like, there, you can find that pretty much everywhere you look in religious stuff, in spiritual stuff, texts. Different versions of it. But again, that's how the universe works through us, by bastardizing truth into truths, or into versions of truth. Here's the Sufi version. Because when they say die while remaining alive, do they really mean it? Or do they mean their version of it, where what you're really dying into or giving over to is their system of stuff? It's the same with Christians. It's like, die into me, you know? No. Why would I do that? Why can't I just die? Why do I have to die into you? But I wanted some clarity on that, so I asked him to clarify, like, which experiences are you... Because I thought maybe he was talking about the alien abduction stuff. Like, did these somehow have to do with lead me to it or something? But he said no. He says, I can't actually point to specific experiences that you described, but what I do think about are a couple of statements of yours. One is, you can't want the thing you want. And the other is a revelation that ends thought. I get this idea from you, that the ego is dissolved. He wrote that the ego is dissolved. So I don't know if there's another word after the, or if the is just a word that shouldn't be there. That's what I think it is. So I'll read it again that way. I get this idea from you that the ego is dissolved. When you talk about the drug trips where people are still watching from the sidelines, to me that means the ego is still there. And that doesn't qualify as an experience that is totally transforming. The person is still there. To me, that means the person or the ego did not die, did not transform. You actually had an experience where you were not there, an experience where you were not you. Isn't that correct? And so the only psychedelics I've ever done are for Paratopia with Jeff Ritzmann separately. We weren't together, in different doses. He did a couple, I did a gajillion. Mushrooms, mushroom trip, a massive, big thing of mushrooms. To see what that was like, to compare it to alien abductions, and really what I ended up comparing it to was the spiritual stuff. The Kundalini and the slit opening, the universal experience, all that stuff I'd had before the mushroom trip. So I am in the very fortunate position to be able to compare and contrast, DMT tripping to that. And yeah, what I've been saying, and I've been saying on the show, I think too, is that they are completely different. But again, to me, the psychedelic trip is another version of the universe giving you facsimiles of the real, but gussying it up in imagination. And I mean, essentially, if you do enough shrooms, or I haven't done ayahuasca, I haven't done pure DMT, but I'm going to assume that they're all roughly the same in the sense that, the cartoon of dreams spills into the room. I mean, with shrooms, there's the hallucination of with your eyes open. And for me, that was like, my apartment in Queens, in New York, was like full of sort of rubbery vines, not like ouchy, licking, harmful vines. They had, spines on them, but they were rounded and like cartoonish. But my whole place was a jungle, kind of. And I had like a shadow on the curtain of the wall, like came out like an elephant. It was like a little elephant trunk, and that was my friend. and some other shadows coming from the closet, creeping around. Those were evil, and that was scary, and I had to get out of there. You know, it was this kind of thing. At one point, a sort of organic-looking small UFO, I heard it, and then I saw it come crashing through the ceiling and sit there in the ceiling, and the smoke coming out of it, and these grasshopper people got out and started trying to fix it, and then I was buried 6 feet under, and this grasshopper turned and looked at me and chirped like a cricket, and, you know, fun things like that. But then with eyes closed, there are these what feel like, you know, what people may call astral journeys or things like this. And when I did it, I was Kundalini active. I had shut up so that the will of silence would do its thing, and I just had that be my guide. And it would actually do these hand gestures to, I'm assuming, chakras, these energy centers, and it was almost like playing me like a flute. Like, you could see colors lighting up and stuff, and then I would be thrust into, go through outer space to a planet, and there would be grass and a pyramid, or I'd be inside Krishna consciousness, this blue boy consciousness or whatever. All of this stuff, all of this archetypal stuff, all of this, and none of it was real. I mean, even if it felt real at the time, there was also a part of it that felt like, as I've said before, it's like you're being thrust at hyper speed into these various scenarios, it's like you're being forced into various scenarios in someone else's imagination. Like someone's imagining this at you or doing this to you, as opposed to the authentic, as opposed to silence, which is not this noisy bunch of look over here, now experience this, now experience this. Isn't this amazing? Silence is not that at all. And silence, the comparison I make that I think is the best is like getting the fullness of a joke that is a multifaceted joke that you understand all of the facets of, and that makes you laugh naturally. That's spirituality. Whereas psychedelics is somebody tickling your armpit with a feather, and that's tickle torture. And in both cases, you're laughing uproariously, but one is satisfying and the other is somebody torturing you. That's my analogy. But because that's so different than normal reality, I think most people who do psychedelics do think that it's the real deal. Because it's a different deal. It's such a different deal. And I don't want to downplay sort of the awe-inspiring nature also of what happens during the psychedelic trip, because there is a lot of awe-inspiring stuff. Like, it is all like, gawk at this, gawk at this. That's the point. But just the question is that the authentic, or is that the universe? Is that coming from that which transcends and includes the universe, or is that coming from, like, is that the underbelly of the universe? Is that the formless awarenesses, or even just the formless collective, I don't know what, imagination of the universe? I think it's that. It's spectacular, but it's just not the same thing. But we so want it to be the same thing because we want to be the ones who have been spiritually enlightened. But again, the death of self, not the transmutation of self, is what's needed. Or the death of self, not the being put into another state of mind, because that's what it is, right? It's a different state of mind that you visit and then you come back to normal. But it is of mind nonetheless, the mind of the universe, the universal mind of man. And that's not the same thing. And you know this because, again, there's no death of self. And there are people, as I've said before in other talks, there are people who have claimed to experience the void or nothingness, but it's always an experience of it. I was alone in space, or I was alone in blackness. And often they feel lonely, they feel terrified, or they feel like, and when they come out of it, even though it was terrifying or lonely, it's good because they realize that that's something they need to work on in themselves. Or maybe they realize it in the moment, you know? So it's like therapeutic and it's psychologically beneficial and healing for them. And then that feels like the spiritual thing, because we don't know what the spiritual thing is, because we've not experienced it, because we're too busy being us trying to experience it, than getting that the me who wants to experience it is the construct in the way, is the noise in the way of silence. So if you don't know that, you run noise to noise to noise. You make more noise. Even if you get quieter and quieter through meditation, you're still making noise. So let's not AMSR this thing. Is that right? Is that what it is? Or AMSR? ASMR? I don't know. So yes, the person is still there during the mushroom trip. At no point is there nothingness. At no point is there unconsciousness completely. And there is with Kundalini coming alive, because having room to maneuver, and there is with the universal, you know, the slit opens up, I slide out through the slit into nothingness. There's the moment of nothingness. And when I say moment of nothingness, that then becomes conscious, that then becomes the universe, realize that this is all simultaneous. I mean, I am experiencing it one after the other, which I think you kind of have to, because nothingness is nothingness. So there is no time, right? There ain't no nothing. There's no feeling about it. There's nothing. It is void, but no void. It's not void in anticipation of things. You can't describe nothingness except just say the word over and over again, like I just keep doing. But so then when you have the experience of then being conscious again, or being consciousness per se, then there becomes this linear thing of, okay, nothingness is also consciousness, and now is also thingness. So in the way that I've played with this, you know, just to have like a logical construct is like, yeah, if you think about it, nothingness is the ultimate concept, because it's the only concept we can say that is the case when there's nothing there, including the brain, which scientists try to tell us is what creates consciousness, right? Or a materialist, not all scientists, but most of them. Materialists want consciousness to be a product of the brain. Thought is a product of the brain. You are a product of the brain, but consciousness per se, the brain is a product of consciousness per se. And therefore, so are you. Ting! Right, so nothingness is the case. When you strip away all things, there's nothing. But nothingness is also, it is and isn't. It is nothingness, and it is a thing, which is a concept. And concepts exist in intelligence. But if there's no brain for this intelligence to exist in, no body for this intelligence to exist in, then this intelligence is pure intelligence. It's just pure formless awareness. And what's it doing? What is this formless awareness doing? The very root thing it's doing is being, because it is. So isn't-ness and is-ness are forever conjoined. They are one, right? So nothingness is always being, because nothingness is consciousness per se. It is the intelligence of silence. It is truth. Nothingness is these things, and also nothingness, and also complete void. It's both at the same time. And so what is it being? It's being all things. I mean, ultimately, what can nothing be? It can only be different than itself. Zero can't be more zero, so it must be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You know, go on down the list. Or formless awarenesses, negative 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So nothingness is being all things in simply, because it is consciousness per se. It is being all things. And one of those things is you blocking out that fact. Or understanding it as a fact, as like, oh, that makes sense, but I'm still not living that way. So that is not something that you get through psychedelics. That is not just an understanding, but that is you. That is you when it is. I mean, as a self-identity, let's put it that way. As a first person experiencing the self-identity of nothingness, of consciousness. I mean, nothingness, the nothing part of nothingness doesn't have self-identity. But this is where my words are failing me, the both at the same time part, the thingness, the consciousness, we can self-identify as that. But we can also have fake versions of that hierarchically through the universe telling us we're getting somewhere. Because we've put all of our focus on trying to get somewhere. And so it gives us places to climb to. And psychedelics are a instant route to that happening manically. To all sorts of stuff, high and low. And again, because they're different and because they are not you doing it, and because you authentically may feel better psychologically or whatever, you think like, oh, that must be what the big spiritual experience is. I've had the peak experience. But the peak experience isn't an experience. It is you. Now, I know this. I'm not living that point of view. I'm living a different point of view. I'm not living your point of view, and I'm not living the point of view I'm telling you about. I'm somewhere in between, where I am me, the ego self. If I shut up for a second now, silence comes alive. That shutting up the silence, shutting up the self for silence to come alive, to well up and do the thing initially, that doesn't mean that you have to forever be shattered. That means, I think you should, but if you're dumb like me, what you do is you live alongside it as if it's separate. So in a way, I'm making the same mistake that you are, but just in a different way. Whereas you're blocking it out completely and doing, fake twitchy shit, and not you, Ron. I'm talking to people who do the fake twitchy shit and think like, oh, that's Kundalini. No, I'm doing the real Kundalini, but I'm blocking it out as my first person identity, right? The will of truth or the will of silence is not this guy talking to you right now. It's when I shut up for a second, that becomes the case. And the big universal God man or universal consciousness person, non-binary entity, however you want to frame it, I rejected being that. I thought for the time being, I guess that's the part I forgot to say, is like, I kind of thought I could go back to it, or somehow I would find my way back to it. I know you can't do the exact same thing over again, or you just end up in an illusion, but I just figured, I'll get there. Which may have been a mistake. Or, again, it may have been a false choice to begin with. But whatever the case is, I'm not living as that, and I know that that is what we need to be. And, let's hope for my sake that I am here telling you this, as potentially normal as can be, and I didn't screw myself over by doing that, because, as we've learned, no one's watching this, to maybe my wife later. So I hope she ascends to something. All right, that's it. If there's no one there and you have no questions and you have no comments, then I am shutting down for the day. Click on comments to show it on the screen. What? Oh, yeah. Live viewer comments show up in the stream. Yeah. Thanks. I guess that means I don't have people talking to me. Okay. That's good. I like talking to myself. I'm pretty good at it. All right. I'm gone. Go about your days. Thanks for watching. People in the future who do watch. Everyone who's not watching me live right now, you can suck it. Ron, thank you for your questions. Aloha. Okay, goodbye.